So it's Monday, so as usual on the Rock Rachon on TVP World, Joe Lindsley is with us. Joe, welcome back. Where the hell are you going?
Well, Michal, I'm talking to you right now from Kharkiv, but today I was at a location I cannot disclose. It was a polygon, which is the Ukrainian term for military training ground, and it's a place where people learn how to demine, how to destroy all the various types of Russian mines that are littering Ukrainian fields. That the Russians, among these types of mines are the cluster bombs, which it's a big joke at the demining academy. There's no cluster bombs because Putin says he hasn't used them yet. And I saw plenty of evidence of those bombs, those Russian cluster bombs today. But Michal,
actually, that's what Putin said, that he's got tons of them and he can use it in the future. But before we move, because you've sent us a couple of pictures of the devices that are over there. From my standpoint, It just looks like, for example, we can show the pictures right now, like a bunch of bottles with something inside, just a regular plastic bottle with some wires connected and some devices, or other stuff like this. It doesn't look on the picture like something really dangerous, which it is. Could you describe what actually are we looking at?
So, in addition to the sort of professional mines, and some of them are new, some are Soviet era, as the Russians leave behind, an occupied village, they booby trap houses and buildings, and it's in fact at the demining training center they have set up. They've recreated Ukrainian villages. So when you're training, you go, and I went into some of these recreated houses. Every single thing can be booby trapped. So, for example, there was a jar of protein powder, and this is a real story. A Ukrainian soldier opened it up, and it was mined. It blew up in his face. And
so anything can be a mine, any object.
Yeah, teddy bears. The cushion in the sofa. I was talking with one of the leaders of the training there, and his house was occupied by the Russians. He was in Kharkiv city, but his house in the village, and the whole place was mined. And it took many incredible work to demine it. And then there's even scarier things, like in the forest, they have fishing wire that's hanging down with a little tiny hook, and you can't see it. And if that catches you, there's grenades and mines and trees. And the scary thing there is it's almost impossible to find them. It's hard to see them. There's no detector that can find them. They were saying if you have shorter people, that can be helpful because maybe their head will not hit the wire. But when you see just how sinister and nasty and evil this equipment is, one of the scariest it's called a spider mine. And it rests just on the top of the ground. It's sort of the missile lands and it deploys different pieces over a large territory. And it senses the vibrations of a human walking, and it triggers when you're about 10 meters away, but it doesn't go off until you're 6 meters away. And so it's maximized for total destruction. And then the way to demine, you can use the major mining vehicles, you can use metal detectors, but then there's no room for error. So you have to be incredibly precise. And so my friends today were showing me the work they do, and I attempted it myself with dummy mines. And just imagine an area, 1 square meter, about 1 square meter. You have to, in that little area, poke 160 times with a metal stick, a metal rod.
Sure.
And that rod must be
1 square meter.
It could take you 40 minutes. It could take you hours. The rod must always be at a 30-degree angle. If you're a little bit off, you could trigger the mine if you hit it. And imagine you're wearing a helmet and the full body protection armor under the hot sun, and once you get tired, you lose your focus, and you could easily trigger the mine. And then in addition to the mines, there are tripwires everywhere. And so the beautiful Ukrainian countryside, the fertile fields of Ukraine, but also critical infrastructure. When the Russians attack like a power plant and they use the cluster bomb, there is active ordnance throughout. And in order to get infrastructure working, you need the deminers to go there. And so just to reiterate...
Can we stop here for a second? Because actually this is a subject that I think last week we talked about it. We also talked about it with our military experts, but maybe some of our viewers watched it for the first time, or they haven't been close to the issues of the world in war in Ukraine. What are those devices that can be thrown out of the airplanes or through the missiles that are exploding over certain territory? And as far as I understand, the mines that explode afterwards could be also deployed in that way. Is that what we are talking about?
Yeah, well, so one example of this is the cluster munitions, and it's been in the news because United States, Washington said that they would send cluster munitions to Ukraine. Russia has been using these against Ukraine since the very beginning. Here in the city of Kharkiv, I can still see, even as I drive now, pockmarks from cluster munitions. What it is, it's one bomb that, as it lands and as it explodes, it deploys multiple sort of baby bombs, which ideally, I mean, they're supposed to be designed to explode right away. So if you watch a video of a cluster bomb, you'll see multiple explosions. But especially with the Russian munitions, I'm told that it's about a 40% rate of detonation. I'm sorry, 40% air. So 40% of those little bombs will not detonate immediately, which means they maybe in a few hours, maybe in a few days, maybe years down the road. The American cluster munitions, at least we're told, have a 1 to 2% dud rate, so much less hazardous down the road. But the reason why people
it means that huge part of those devices that are that were supposed to explode in midair do really pose a threat to the people who are on the ground level. Joe, you also wrote something very, or actually before we move to the political things that are related to the war, you wrote a very interesting piece on our website about it. Could you give us an update on the current state of affairs in terms of the fundraising and the things that our viewers can provide to the soldiers in Ukraine?
Yes, and I will say, and by the way, here in Kharkiv, by the way, over the weekend we had so many missile attacks, it's hard to keep track. And I've been offline all day today due to the secure location. But I was able to transfer money to the Group 35 in Lviv over the weekend. They are purchasing a truck for a soldier who goes by the name Mikita, which will be absolutely essential for his work in the counteroffensive. So we hope to purchase that truck this week. And now the big focus is we want to purchase night scopes for rifles and some night visions. And we need to purchase 2 of the Mavic drones. Importantly, the drones, these are made in China, but when Ukrainians get them in their hands, they change the software because there's a concern that the Chinese could use these to spy. Ukrainians are very good at adapting these drones. Each one is about $3,500. So we're trying now this week to buy 2 of those. In addition to the rifle scopes, which cost about $1,000 each. And we accept donations at UkrainianFreedomNews.com. If you use tax-deductible option, we can buy drones and trucks. If you want to help with the rifle scopes, that the PayPal option enables us to do that at UkrainianFreedomNews.com. And another, Michal, we had one.
Yeah, sure. Huh? I just wanted to underline that there are options of tax-deductible and non-tax-deductible. If you want to spend some more money, then it costs probably a little bit more to provide some lethal help. But that's just a short comment.
It's an important thing. Yeah, it's important to underscore because despite all this, support, a lot of things cannot be supported via tax-deductible donations. There are rules against this. And so for those who really want to help get the job done quicker, you can just give money and we'll get it to the guys who need it for the rifle scopes and we'll keep you posted with their stories. By the way, I should know, when I was at the Demining Center today, they call it humanitarian demining because it is humanitarian. It's enabling people to get back to their lives and back to their work. But at the same time, it's, also the demining is essential for the counteroffensive. And I got to mention this because, the counteroffensive is obviously moving very slowly. And now I see fully why, because it's a painstaking process to demine. And for me, I was practicing today with removing boxes of ammunition. Let's say there's a stack of these boxes, and you put this cat claw on the box, and then you got to go very far away, and then you got to, as you pull it off, so it hits the ground, you have to hit the ground to protect yourself, and then you got to wait 20 minutes before you can go back and deal with the next one, because there could be munitions that explode later. So just imagine that, just to underscore how painstaking the process is,
and how time-consuming it is. Joe, actually, we will move to the political part in a second, but actually, you mentioned something very interesting. There was a claim, we just quoted John Sweeney, who is in Ukraine since the very beginning of the war. On his YouTube daily report from war, he quoted the words of Vlad Olsputler, who said that actually Ukrainian counteroffensive failed, is over, and it's a thing of past right now, according to Vladimir Putin. So what's your take on this? What is the reality of the front line you are somewhere close to, as we can see?
Ukrainians are, for the most part, gaining ground. There were some reports of a little bit of lost ground in somewhere in the east, but for the most part, Ukrainians are steadily gaining. But it's exactly this: the Russians had time to mine their defenses, so it's thick and fraught with mines, and this is why it's very slow. Unfortunately, a lot of guys are losing life and limb, and this is, this is what Ukraine has to do right now. And meanwhile, there's increased, I'd say certainly here in Kharkiv, we've seen these increased Russian attacks. Like over the weekend, usually if there's a missile attack on the city, it's one per day, and usually not every day. But now we've had like 2 sets of attacks yesterday and then several days before. And so there is this new intensity. And again, it brings up the urgent question, which was ignored at NATO. Everyone at the NATO summit last week was talking about, can Ukraine join NATO in some future bright, sunshiny day? But the more urgent thing, will Ukraine be given both the permission and the weapons to hit targets within Russia, so Russia can no longer send these missiles to Ukraine, and have the tools of air superiority, because right now in the counteroffensive, they're relying on pushing forward on the ground, and that is a very long, painstaking process. And a lot of people said Ukraine has to prove something major by the end of the summer. A lot of Americans have said this. It's going to be, it is going to be very hard to have that type of success without increased support. And with the elections coming up in the States, the election cycle beginning.
So the election thing that you just mentioned, actually your piece, and I highly recommend all of our viewers to go to tvpworld.com, to our website, and read your piece. Because you are pointing to, at least this is the way I understood it, to the political aspect of the debate over the Ukraine within the American political sphere. And it looks like both sides, both the conservatives and the Democrats, the liberal and conservative part of the American political scene, seem to have some issues with Ukraine on one hand, and on the other hand, the support is still continues. Why did you decide to write about it? What is the most interesting thing that you wanted to point? Because you referred to the Burisma case, which we discussed here, but you also pointed to the very interesting thing, which was the effect of the Chinese-American relations and the COVID pandemic in terms of Hong Kong, which was related to Maidan, and the whole aspect of the global support for Ukraine and Chinese approach to support of Russia and what Chinese are doing on the territory that belong to them.
Well, yeah, I wrote this piece, which is headlined, "Dear American Conservatives, Burisma is Russian, not Ukrainian." And the impetus here, because for all the reasons I just explained, the situation is urgent here. And if we don't not only maintain support, but also change people's minds and get those who have been reluctant either to support Ukraine at all, or reluctant to believe that Ukraine can take back the Crimean Peninsula, that the Russian Federation can be broken apart. If we don't change some of those minds, this is going to, Ukrainians won't give up, but a lot of lives are going to be lost, and it's going to go on for a long time. And so Ben Wallace, the UK Defense Secretary, who unfortunately is resigning inexplicably to me, he said after the NATO summit, he said, one of the toughest obstacles we have are United States Congress. That's why he said Ukraine has to be grateful. We have to kind of stoke the egos of people in Congress and explain things to them, and it's very difficult. And even as he says,
so what do you make of it? Is it a presidential campaign ahead, or is it? I don't know. We got the things that are related to the history of Joe Biden in Ukraine, which is basically the Burisma. We got the Trump issues with Ukraine, who is also an important figure here in this upcoming election. Are those the reasons for which the political process of the supporting Ukraine in the fast track to NATO slowed down?
Well, more than the reasons, I think we have a bit of misinformation that we're dealing with. So last week in a congressional oversight hearing, Republicans were saying, and this was echoed by leading Republican voices like Charlie Kirk, who has a huge audience. They're saying, Biden is supporting Ukraine only because of this so-called smoking gun that his son, Hunter Biden, made money from Burisma. And Burisma, even the AP and all the mainstream media call Burisma a Ukrainian energy firm. And that's just not true. So, and it's very important and it's very, like 2 sentences, we can clear it up. Burisma was led by, its CEO was in the cabinet of Viktor Yanukovych, and Yanukovych fled the country with the whole, with the CEO of Burisma during the Revolution of Dignity, February 24th, 2014. And then at that point, Burisma was cut off from its energy fields in the Crimean Peninsula. And then so Burisma benefited, now based in Moscow, they benefited from Putin taking Crimea. And by the way, Obama-Biden administration did nothing to stop that. And this is not partisan.
Joe, it makes the thing only more complicated, not easier. Because that's the fact, because Burisma is a part of the Russian, Soviet, whatever you call it, the business surrounding. And if you have Hunter Biden being on the payroll of a company effectively financed by Russia, which is the opposite side of this war, and when you got a history of things related to the prosecutor general and firing prosecutor general under the previous government in Ukraine after the Dignity Revolution, it makes the thing so complicated with so many links crossing here that it's very difficult to find the reasons for what we are seeing right now.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of complications, and it's going to take us a lot to figure out the truth of some of these things. But there's a very simple thing that needs to be made clear, that Burisma is not Ukrainian, because so many people who are opposing support for Ukraine, that is the centerpiece of their argument. And that's it. For not supporting Ukraine, it's because of Burisma. And if you look at all their arguments, if you took that piece away, then they're going to have to find a better argument not to support this. So what I emphasize this because Ukrainians are caught in the middle of this. Everyone I know here is fighting for their freedom. No one wants to live in Russian tyranny. And the Hunter Biden made money from a company that benefited from Putin taking Crimea, that was based in Moscow. Hunter Biden also, his equity firm with the stepson of John Kerry, works with Chinese defense companies that were trying to buy Ukraine's top helicopter engine company. And so these guys have been, the elites have been messing around here for a while trying to take advantage of this country. And but that's not what Ukraine's fighting for. Ukrainians kicked these people out of their country in 2014. So if you want to stand up to the elites, support Ukrainians. And that's the message. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, if you want to stand up to tyranny, not just Putin, but also the corruption in our own countries, support the Ukrainians. That's been their project from the Maidan Revolution of 2014. And I hear, the Americans who praise the Ottawa truckers and they praise the Dutch farmers for bringing down the government in the Netherlands. They missed somehow 2014. 2014 was more extraordinary than those because it was more effective. In fact, 2014 was so effective that now every single week,
and there,
millions of dollars
I'll put another thing here. It takes really a lot of courage, a lot of guts to organize an uprising against the tyranny, the armed tyranny, not of a democratic country, because Ukraine wasn't a democratic country, and the man who was ruling Ukraine back there, Viktor Yanukovych, was actually a Putin's puppet. So it takes quite a courage to organize this kind of revolution and lose lives. 100 people died on the Maidan of revolution. Sure.
President Zelensky, when he became president, he hired as his press secretary the girl who broke the story in the New York Times about the money that Hunter Biden made from Burisma. So when Zelensky came into office, he was attuned to this and possibly open to investigating that. He and President Trump had that phone call. But then when Trump was starting with the impeachment, Trump stepped away from Ukraine. I was kicked out of the White House when I went to visit October 2019, simply because I had been in Ukraine. So Trump abandoned, I think the White House under Trump abandoned Ukraine because they were scared off by those who did not want people to investigate the Burisma controversy. So this is on the left and the right. There's been a lot of silliness, and that caused a lot of problems that have got us into this situation.
Well, it didn't make the whole situation even easier, what you just said. It's even more complicated. But these things are described precisely in Joe's latest text on tvpworld.com. Our viewers will love reading it. Joe, thanks a lot. Travel safe to your destination in the undisclosed location. Thanks a lot. See you soon.
Thank you, Michal. And Burisma is not Ukrainian. Thank you.
See you, Joe. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. We come back with Rock Rachon tomorrow. Same place, same time.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Що він сказав?
Well, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?